Or John Hayes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to bring us back to Planet New Zealand, away from Planet Labour. And before I speak about Part 2 and the changes in Part 2 that we're debating at this point now, Mr. Chairman, I think we have to look at the global reasons as to why we are making these changes and why we're introducing this bill. And we're doing it because we want to make a more competitive and productive economy. And with reference to that last speaker, I've got to say to you that I didn't ever feel that Mr. Muldoon was about making a more productive economy, or certainly a competitive one. And it's because we want to do this. It is only by lifting our economic performance can we create jobs, boost incomes, improve living standards and provide world-class services for the people in my electorate, in the Wairarapa electorate. That's what we want to deliver to them, Mr. Chairman. And I would like to reinforce comments made by the Minister. Before we made changes to KiwiSaver, the scheme was costing the government $1.2 billion a year and rising in subsidies and tax breaks. And we had to borrow that money from overseas. We had to borrow that money from overseas. And the Minister said that was not sustainable. So what we have done is we've kept the $1,000 kickstart payment from the government. That hasn't been changed in this bill. It's not changed in Part 2, Mr. Chairman. We have reduced the government's borrowing and increased private sector contributions to KiwiSaver. Why are we doing that? To increase national savings. So, for the year ending 30th of June 2012 and beyond, the tax credit was halved to 50 cents for every dollar contributed by members, up to a maximum of $521 in a year. That's what this bill provides for. Mr. Chairman, from 1 April 2012, employer contributions are being taxed at a rate broadly equivalent to an employee's marginal rate. And then from 1 April 2013, this bill provides for the minimum employee contribution to increase to 3%. And the compulsory employer contributions will increase to 3% as well. It's not a flip-flop. It's about saying we've managed to get the scheme under control. It is now sustainable because we have to give Kiwis confidence that future governments can afford to maintain KiwiSaver. There'll be future national governments, of course. Now, the government's going to spend, as a result of these changes, $2.6 billion less over 4 years on member tax credits. We will encourage private sector savings, and the employer and government contributions, including the $1,000 kickstart, will continue as an attractive savings option. Mr. Chairman, the changes in Part 2 are creating a simpler and fairer tax system that rewards hard work. That'll be a foreign concept to many of the people across the House. And despite the protestations of the ex-family commissioner who delivered nothing in his period of tenure, spent $9 million a year for no delivery, no outcome whatever. So what we will be doing through these changes is protecting the vulnerable, the very people he professes to be concerned about. Now, we have delivered across the board tax cuts, Mr. Chairman, and we're delivering more money to working New Zealanders. 2/3 of the cost of the income tax went into reducing the bottom two tax rates. So now we're in a situation where about the changes in Part 2 of this bill will mean that 3/4 of the earners are paying no more than 17.5% in personal income tax. We've cut the company tax in this bill to 28%, ensuring our businesses remain competitive. And when you're concerned about families, or you profess to be, Mr. Chairman, we will find that two children and in a family can earn up to $50,000 a year for that family and pay no tax at all when you take, Mr Chair, working families into account. Mr Chair.
John Hayes.
So I'd just like to repeat that because I was being rudely interrupted. I want to stress, in response to the concerns or the professed concerns across the chamber, that a family with two children can earn $50,000 a year and pay no tax at all. Zero tax. Zero tax. How much is nothing? Zero. That's the tax that a family with two children will pay. So what is going on in this community, and our families, and certainly my constituents in the Wairarapa know that, our after-tax wages are increasing faster than prices under this government. Mr Chairman, I've heard various speakers on the other side of the House slandering Rich White and Fay, and I want to point out to them that they haven't read the changes that we're proposing in this bill, because what the bill does, it takes steps to tighten the private property tax rules by eliminating depreciation, removing the LAQC rules, and improving working for family and integrity measures. IRD audit and compliance, and I congratulate the Minister of Revenue for his work in this area, their funding for that has been increased, and we expect that to generate substantial revenue in the 4 years to 2014 and 15. But of course, under the people from the opposition who are criticising this legislation, their alternative is to bring in a capital gains tax. They want to more than double the employer contribution to KiwiSaver costs, and they want a big gap between the company rate and the top personal rate that encourages tax avoidance. Mr Chairman, we do not on this side of the House stand for those changes. In Part 2, we will see that the application date for changes to profit distribution plans, under which bonus shares issued by a company will be treated as a taxable dividend, they'll be deferred from 1 July 2012 to 1 October 2012. And if you were to read the bill and the parts of the bill that we're making change, you'd see this is very straightforward. Mr Chairman, other changes to GST provisions have also been made, such as clarifying the definition of land and where new apportionment rules for zero rating supplies can be used. Mr Chairman, the Foreign Investor Tax Credit Scheme will be extended to investors in foreign investment portfolio investment entitles with application from 2013 and 2014. And as several speakers have noted tonight, Part 2 provides for the deductibility of unsuccessful software development costs, and they'll apply from the 2006-2007 income year rather than from 2007-2008. So as the Minister said, these are very taxpayer-friendly changes. Mr Chairman, the KiwiSaver membership start date will be clarified for persons who joined through their employer. The start date determines when a person is able to withdraw their savings after 5 years of membership if aged 65 years and older, and I would think that that will apply to the former Family Commissioner. Mr Chairman, further amendments allowing certain shareholder employees of close companies to receive the in-work tax credit will also apply from 2011 rather than the 1 April 2012 to enable eligible individuals to claim a tax credit for the 2011-2012 income year. Mr Chair, finally I should say that in Part 2 the bill is going to clarify the tax position of insurance companies where there is a transfer of business during the income year. Mr Chair, I congratulate the Minister for bringing to this House in the bill a series of very coherent changes to the bill and a series of coherent tax policies which will ensure that all New Zealanders will be better off and that people will be better in work and will get more money in their bank accounts, able to save more through the policies that are being introduced by the Minister. I commend this bill, Mr Chair.
Mr Chairman. Dr Regime Brazard.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. What an interesting, fully read speech from that member.